Welcome to my Bake Escape. Spring is in the air. The weather in Northern California has been so nice the last few days. I was inspired to make these delicious strawberry lemon cupcakes. This recipe is so simple because I use a few store-bought items, and then I show you how to make the creamiest, dreamiest lemon American buttercream to top them with. For the details of this recipe and lots of other delicious recipes, visit mybakeescape.com. Follow me on Instagram and Pinterest at mybakeescape, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel, be sure to do that by clicking that subscribe button. So for this recipe, you can use your favorite vanilla cake mix. I'm using the yellow cake baking mix from Trader Joe's, and this recipe calls for melted butter, milk, and eggs. And if you do use your favorite box mix and it calls for water, you can substitute that water for milk, and the oil that it calls for can be substituted with melted butter, and that'll just give that cake mix a little bit more of a homemade flavor. Those are just some tips and tricks that I use when I'm using cake mix that I buy from the store. So just follow the directions on the back of the box and you will end up with a delicious batter like this. Now, the cupcake base will be vanilla, but we're going to add lemon to the buttercream later on. So for cupcakes, I use a cupcake pan, and I also use this size. I think it's an 18-8 Attico ice cream scoop. And I use number 73 cupcake liners. And sometimes the liners will stick, so I just slightly wet my hand, and that just kind of helps remove each liner from each other so I'm not doubling up. And then using that ice cream scoop, I level out each scoop so that there is the same amount of batter per cupcake. I like to spread the tops with a small spatula, just kind of evening out the batter in the cupcake liner. When you get to the end of the batter, sometimes it's hard to scoop out an even amount of that cupcake mixture. So what I do is I use a spatula to kind of scoop in the rest of the cupcakes into the cupcake liners. And I think if I had taken my time a little bit more, I could have had 18 cupcakes total, but I overfilled the last cupcake with a little bit more batter, and looking back, I probably could have split that into two to get 18 total, but I ended up with 16 cupcakes with this recipe. Depending on your recipe or the box mix, you can get up to 24 cupcakes, so just keep that in mind. I ended up with 16 cupcakes. And you'll see 17 go in the oven, but that one that I overfilled I was able to use it. So I just ate that on its own. It was delicious. Another thing that I like to do is gently tap the pan. That helps kind of even out the batter in the cupcake liner. And then these baked in a 350-degree Fahrenheit oven for about 18 minutes. I do check on them midway through, and I will rotate the pans halfway through baking as well. And while the cupcakes were baking, I went ahead and washed my produce. Over this, you're going to also need some fresh strawberries and a whole lemon. So this is about the halfway mark. You'll see that they are kind of baking. They're definitely not done yet, but I do take time to rotate the pans midway through. And this is what the cupcakes look like after they're done baking. And you see there's some that are a little bit darker because parts of the oven are hotter, so that's why I like to rotate them. But carefully, using a kitchen towel, I moved over the baking pan and I removed the cupcakes from the pan, being very careful because the cupcakes are warm and that pan is still hot. And I want to remove them from the pan so that they don't continue to bake and brown a little bit on the bottoms. And this is what the cupcakes look like. So I let them cool completely before moving on to the next step. So while the cupcakes cool, I move on to making my delicious lemon buttercream icing. For this, I use powdered sugar, a little bit of salt, vanilla extract, butter, zest from a lemon, and lemon juice. So to start, I'm going to cream the butter together. So I'm using a cup, which is 2 sticks of unsalted room temperature butter. Using my hand mixer, I cream this together for about 3 minutes until it is light and fluffy. Halfway through, I use a spatula to scrape down the sides of the bowl just to make sure that all of that butter is nice and mixed in and light and fluffy. And this is what it looks like after 3 minutes of beating with that hand mixer. Next, I add all of the powdered sugar. So this is 4 cups of powdered sugar for this recipe. And with the mixer on low, I begin to incorporate that powdered sugar into the butter. This is the stage that I add the salt, and the vanilla extract. Salt and vanilla is key to making a delicious American buttercream. And I also add the zest of this lemon. So I'm using a microplaned zester here. It's one of my favorite tools in the kitchen. And I'm just taking the yellow part of the lemon off. Then I cut the lemon in half, and using my other favorite tool, I'm using this lemon juicer to extract the juice from the lemon and add it to the buttercream. I start by adding half of the lemon. I just want to add the liquid little by little because I want to reach a certain creamy consistency. If you add a little too much liquid, you can also always add a little bit more powdered sugar, but I tend to add the liquid a little bit at a time until I reach the consistency that I want. So at this point, it's still very stiff. It's not mixed together very well, so I added the rest of the lemon. So I used 1 full lemon for this recipe, and also some of you might get smaller lemons or larger lemons, so just add the liquid a little bit at a time until you get a nice creamy spreadable consistency. At this stage, it looks really good, but I can tell that it's a little stiff. So I also added a little bit, splash or 2 of half and half. You can use any type of milk that you have on hand, just a little at a time. Mix that in, and that was the perfect amount because I have a nice, creamy, smooth, spreadable lemon buttercream. You can see specks of the lemon zest in there. So make sure to taste your buttercream. So I always like to give it a little taste, make sure that I have enough salt to balance out that sweetness. If it is too sweet, you can add a pinch more of salt. If it is too salty, if you overdid it with the salt, you can add a little bit more powdered sugar and vanilla extract to balance that out. But I found that this was perfect. So now it's time to prep my piping bag. So I believe this is a 16-inch piping bag, and I use this large round piping tip. This is a 805 Attico piping tip. So I place the tip inside of the bag, make sure it goes through the hole there. I fold over the top of the piping bag onto my hand, and I have my hand in a cupping shape. And then I just start filling the piping bag by placing the buttercream in there, and then as I place the buttercream, I'm kind of pushing it down with the spatula. This helps eliminate air bubbles, so as I'm adding the buttercream, I am pushing it down. Once I add all the buttercream, I carefully fold the top over, push it down a little bit, squeeze and twist the edge, and push through it until some buttercream comes out, and my piping bag is ready. The next step I'm going to do is fill these cupcakes. So the other component to these cupcakes is lemon curd. Trader Joe's has an amazing jarred lemon curd that I like to use if I'm in a hurry, because lemon curd can take a few hours to make. But if you want to make lemon curd from scratch, I have a recipe for that and I will put it in the description of this video. It's very delicious and you can use it for so many different things. But for this recipe, to make it quick and easy, I picked up a jar of lemon curd from Trader Joe's. So to fill the cupcakes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a knife to just gently cut the center of each cupcake out. And I reserve that piece of the cupcake because I will top it later after I fill it with the lemon curd. It's very important that the cupcakes are completely cool. If you try to add the buttercream to a warm cupcake, it will melt a little bit because the buttercream has butter in it, so make sure the cupcakes are completely cooled down. So I take a knife and I carefully remove just the center. I'm not going all the way down to the bottom. I am leaving a little bit of cake at the bottom. I'm just taking the center and middle part of the cupcake. So I'm just creating a space to fit just a little bit of that lemon curd in the center of the cupcake. So I'm careful not to go too far close to the edge when I am cutting this circle out inside of the cupcake. Now that I've removed the centers from each of the cupcakes, it's time to add the lemon curd. As I mentioned earlier, this is the lemon curd that I'm using. It's from Trader Joe's and it's very delicious. You don't need too much of this. You just want to add a little bit of that lemon curd to each of the cupcakes. So I use a small spoon and I just gently spoon in a little bit. I would say about 1.5 teaspoons of lemon curd per cupcake. Once the lemon curd has been added to each of the cupcakes, I gently tap the cupcake just to help that lemon curd settle a little bit more into the center of the cupcake. And then I take the tops and place them back on the cupcake, just pushing down slightly and gently. So if you add too much lemon curd, it will pop out and ooze out. So you just need to be mindful to leave a little bit of room after adding the lemon curd so you can place that piece that you cut off previously back on. It will pop back up a little bit, but that's okay. We're going to go ahead and top these with that buttercream so it'll cover up the fact that the cupcake is popping out a little bit. Not a big deal. Now that the cupcakes are filled and that little piece of cake is back on the cupcakes, it's time to work on the strawberries. So I have strawberries that I have washed. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut them straight down the center. I do like to leave the stem on. I think it adds a little nice touch to the finished cupcake, but you can remove the stem if you'd like. I like to use halved strawberries to top the cupcakes with. So I go through and cut each one of these strawberries in half. Now that the cupcakes are filled, the strawberries are prepped, it is time to ice these cupcakes. To pipe icing out of this piping bag, you want to just be very gentle, and you can use your one hand at the top to squeeze the icing out gently and another hand towards the bottom to guide your icing as it goes around the cupcake. And I like to use this type of design for these cupcakes. So I start by piping a little bit and then I just go around and kind of build on top of the icing. I love how you can see specks of that lemon zest throughout the icing. Once the icing has been added to each of the cupcakes, I like to top each cupcake with a halved strawberry. So I gently just press the strawberry down onto the icing. Doesn't that look so pretty? So these cupcakes can be enjoyed right away. You can make them a day ahead. I would just be sure to store them in an airtight container in the refrigerator. The buttercream does have milk in it, so it will need to be refrigerated, and that lemon curd does need to be refrigerated after opening. So I would say, to be safe, I would store these in the refrigerator. Just bring them out about 30 to 45 minutes before you want to serve them, so that buttercream has time to come to room temperature. But this is what the cupcakes look like after they're done, and they turned out so beautiful and very delicious. When you cut them in half, you can see that nice amount of lemon curd right in the center of the cupcake. That buttercream is super creamy and has a perfect amount of lemon zest and lemon flavor. These turned out so good. The cupcake is very moist and tender. The lemon curd is tart and creamy, and that lemon buttercream makes this so dreamy. This is the lemon lover's perfect cupcake, let me tell you. I enjoyed every bite. I hope you enjoyed this video. I enjoyed making it and sharing my tips and tricks when using store-bought products. I first started making cupcakes and cakes. I only used store-bought cake mixes. Throughout the years, I started, making up my own recipes, and I do have a lot that I share with you. But if you're just starting out baking, or if you don't have time to make everything from scratch, there are some really good store-bought products out there. And look what I did today. I took a box cake mix, some store-bought lemon curd, made my own lemon buttercream, and ended up with a delicious bakery-style strawberry lemon cupcake that will impress anybody. They'll never know you use that box mix. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe to my channel. Check out my website for lots of delicious recipes at mybakeescape.com. Thank you for watching, and have a sweet day.